Hello, how's it going? Hopefully anybody's tuned in right now. I'm just logging in a little early, about a minute early here. So do me a favor, because since I'm not normal for this, can you just type in just saying that you can hear me and that you can see me okay? Anybody who's tuning in, I think there's a couple people tuning in right now. Colby, thanks for sending over your question there. Colby, if you're still tuned in, can you do me a favor and just type it? Oh, good, thanks, appreciate it. Awesome. Okay, so really quick, I am not Quentin, of course. I am Robin Rosado, Director of Instruction for Top Speed Golf here in Orlando, Florida. And pretty much my role within the company now is that I do host all in-person lessons as well as all our clinics, especially our really popular one, the distance clinic. And I do a lot of the online lessons as well. So with that being said, give me one second. I'm just going to close my office door. Sorry about that. Okay, sorry. So so what I'm covering for Quentin here while he's away for today and tomorrow, and excited to do this. Sorry, I don't have the setup like Quentin's got. His is pretty sweet there. So yeah, if there's ever a point where you want to here in Orlando and you want to come in for a in-person lesson or one of the clinics, let me know. Shoot me an email, robin@topspeedgolf.com. I am doing in-person lessons now. Just started here recently, obviously with COVID regulations in place. And why don't we go ahead and get started here looking at some of these questions I already sent in. A few of them were sent into prior to the start of the webinar. Let me scroll down a little bit. Let me start with David C. David goes, where is the club position at the top? I'm assuming for a left-handed golfer. Well, David, really quick, the position in top isn't necessarily if you look at any of the videos here at Top Speed, isn't necessarily a super, super important part of the top of the golf swing. Now, there's aspects to it that make it easier for whatever is going on in your golf swing there, David. So, for example, look at like guys who are really long, like Bubba Watson, John Daly, Phil Mickelson, where the club is a little bit across the line there at the top of the swing. Most important thing now into the transition to the downswing. This is why we're not too keen on making sure that there's a perfect position at the very top. The most important part in the downswing, one, is making sure that sequencing is good. And what I mean by that is making sure that lower body starts, hips are rotating open, upper body follows second. Secondly, is that for shallowing the club and generating lag. So for like those who come across the line here, again, like John Daly or Bubba Watson, well, they get it back on plane early into the downswing. So that's the move section on the site, or shallowing the club. So they don't really worry too much at the very top of the swing. Now that, again, depending in, let's just hypothetically say here, David, that you're steep on the way down, and you're across the line at the very top. So for you, I'm sorry, I'm right-handed, but if the club points, in essence, for me, right of target across the line here, and I come down, the angle of my club here is pretty steep. Let me grab a club really quick. So if I'm coming down, so this is steep here, this would be shallow. If I'm coming down pretty steep into the downswing, well, there's got to be some sort of manipulation coming on the way down, whether I shallow the club late, I stay steep, and I come over to top. So in that case there, David, it might be beneficial for you to, at the very top of the swing, get to the point where the club is actually shallow here at the very top, maybe preventing for you coming across the line. So again, there's no real perfect backswing. Same line goes into, so that's the club itself. On the same note, it also goes to the position of the arms and hands, so the path of the arms and hands. So whether you're more of a flat plane swinger, so when the lead arm is more, in essence, across the body here, think like Matt Kuchar, Charlie Hoffman, Ricky Fowler, who's semi-flat plane swingers, or you can be really high with the hands as well. Now you're talking about like Justin Thomas, Victor Hovland. I'm trying to think of some newer guys. Tony Finau gets the hands high, he just doesn't really take it far back. But there's a lot of guys who have high hit. Dustin Johnson. So again, that doesn't really matter per se, but depending on you personally, what's going on in your swing, right? So if you come over to top, maybe again, ideally, I'm a big promoter of keeping the hands high because you get so much room in the backswing to, again, shallow the club, get a lot of lag, and of course get a lot of speed. So In my opinion, if I were to give you here, David, like a general kind of what you should do or what it should be, I would like to see the path of the arms and hands get fairly high there at the very top. Sorry about that. And maybe to make life easier, yeah, in a more neutral position. So that would be like maybe like a fraction shallow, because a lot of people do struggle. So that's the move section on the site, by the way. A lot of people do struggle with shallow in club, like literally all in-person lessons, almost every in-person lesson that I work with. I see even for tour players that I work with. So it's the fact of shallow in club early. That's why I see a lot of guys working on that right now. So that's why we're kind of leaning, towards the point of having the club slightly shallow as you go to the very, very top of the swing, just to make it easy, but not a necessity. So hopefully it answers your question there, David, as far as the position there at the top. I know you're left-handed, but it's the same thing with right-handed and left-handed players. All right. Okay, Colby. So let's go take a look here. You asked me, I have a tendency to stand up versus push off and turn on my lead leg. Any additional drills? So as far as drills are concerned, when it comes to, so what's happening is you're early extending, loss of posture there, misses there typically. If anybody's kind of like watching this and they kind of think about, well, what does standing up really entail? Usually have a good indication if a miss is going to be for a right-handed player, block out there to the right, or you save it with the hands. Could be a miss as a quick hook. Thin is usually, with irons, there's normally a miss when I see with that. Sometimes driver is a little easier to hit because it's teed up. So with that being said, as far as drills are concerned, one drill, the idea behind this here, Colby, is that to stay low. So what I mean by that is not only we're trying to stay low into our posture as far as our upper body is concerned, so staying into our posture here, but also into our lower body. So as we kind of start the downswing, you've always heard the term of like a squat, right? We're sitting down and squatting into our posture, and then we're rotating open. But also in the same lines there, Colby. So maybe, okay, it sounds like you've been working on, utilizing the legs and how you rotate open and how you maintain posture. But maybe for you there, Colby, you might be focusing on more of the upper body aspect, where we are staying more over the ball with our posture and our chest. So covering the ball, you may have heard. Also tie in with that is the aspect of the hands coming in really, really low. So when we stand up, right, if we're standing up, we're coming up this way, and the hands kind of look like this at impact. You're throwing the hands at it, and we have a lot of ulnar deviation here into the hands. So whether the hands are coming nice and low, so a good video for you to watch there, Colby, would be video 1.4 of the straight line release, when that talks to petting the turf. Or if you go into the search bar there, Colby, and just put in low hands, what that does is it focuses on these hands coming in really low, this angle. So again, for right-handed player, of extension here in this right wrist. Let's see if I can lower that just a touch. All right, so this angle here of the right hand, extension there, right? And so those hands are coming in really, really low, so we're petting the turf. So you got to find anything that's going to work really best for you, Colby, as far as, so since you've been working on kind of ground force stuff, but maybe doesn't seem to be working that well, you might have to focus on the upper body and focus on the hands. Other aspect too is you're kind of saying there, when we stand up, I want to try to show you this more with my hands, since I don't have a lot of room to show my legs. So if we stand up, right, we're kind of pushing this way, right? So we're pushing off of our toes. So into the downswing, what's technically happening to the lead foot as I start the downswing, I'm applying pressure more into my lead heel. At least some of the best players are doing that. That helps push the left hip back and open on up. And of course, you're pushing off. So it's like, it looks like this here, Colby. Heel and push off with the right foot. Those hips are able to rotate open and you're able to maintain posture. So one common thing that I see with so many players is that those who stand up out of their posture, also they have a lot of force going from their toes. So you're utilizing your legs, but we're just having too much of that force pushing off the ground into our toes. And again, it's hard to do that. It's easy to do that for a lot of athletes, those who've been, playing other sports their whole entire life, because we're all taught to be on the balls of our feet. Nothing wrong with that, I should say that. But some of the best players out there on tour who rotate open and maintain posture, like Rory McIlroy, for a good example, and he utilizes the ground really, really well, it's going to be more into that lead heel initially down into the ground. So Hopefully that answers your question. I'll recap that, but that seemed like a lot. So Colby, the big thing is that two options there. You can focus onto the feet, like I was just saying there, the heel. And the other option, let's kind of tie it together, is upper body, maintaining posture here in the upper body as you rotate open. So, for the turn, kind of covering the ball with the chest, tying that though with low hands. So that's again like video 1.4, the straight line release. Go into the search bar and put in like just low hands. There's gonna be a slew of videos that pop up with that. And that helps you with the timing of your release as well. And that makes it easier for you to maintain posture there in the upper body. So hopefully that answers your question there, Colby. Yeah, let me know. So, well, good. That was actually kind of it with the questions. I think that was, there's anything, yeah, if you guys have any other questions, let me know. That's what I'm here for. I know we changed the time kind of last minute, so I would be trying to heal at the range. So yeah, that'd be great. Let me know how it goes, Colby. That'd be awesome. I'm tuning in tomorrow, I think the same time, or 11 a.m. tomorrow. But let me know if that works at all for you. And again, kind of feel like with that, almost feel like your left glute is going back. So if this is like my glutes here, almost feel like it's pushing back and you're almost kind of sitting down into that left glute into the downswing. So start off there, Kobe. I would do it like at, hit some full swing shots, but do it at like 50% speed, maybe even super slow motion. Actually, that's a really good drill. Slow motion swings, like hitting the ball and hitting it solid. Slow motion is actually really, really good for you to do there, Colby. All right, so I got one here just now from L. Please explain the sequence of the weight shift in the downswing. So kind of going what I was just saying there. Give me a second. Just get some water here. So what I was just saying there a second ago, the sequencing of weight shift into the downswing. So first of all, I'm sure maybe you've seen a few videos here on the site where right as the club, our backswing completes, so almost as the club kind of sets here at the very top. I don't know if you can see my wrist here. Yeah, so as the club kind of sets, we're already starting our transition to our lead side. So again, as the backswing completes, we are beginning our transition to our lead side into the downswing. And I was just saying there for Colby there, L, some of the best players. So if we're talking about the feet right now, as I transfer that weight into my lead side, what's going to happen is we're going to transfer. I'm getting kind of in detail here, L. But what we're going to do is we're applying pressure roughly to the ball of the lead foot, but immediately, so it goes really fast. It's a little bit of pressure to the ball of that lead foot, and then immediately we're getting onto that heel of the lead foot. Now, again, split second after that, we're also pushing off with the right foot. So that energy, obviously this is happening all in a matter of milliseconds here, L, but that energy transfers up the legs so that the second I apply the pressure into this heel, my left knee is going to externally rotate, right? And so from there, that's going to help push my lead hip back. So right now, I'm apply pressure to lead leg, lead foot / heel, pushing off at the right. I'm rotating, so the left knee is kind of pushing out to then posting up, somewhat straightening out to my left hip opening on up. But also my right hip is also kind of pushing forward, in essence, towards my target. So the hips are rotating open. So that's the lower body. And obviously, this is all happening very, very quickly. But that's where the sequencing the lower body from there. So as my hips are going, now my torso is beginning to rotate. So but at this point, I'm maybe roughly, again, average is going to be about when left arm is parallel to the ground, where you'll see kind of the lower body actually begin to slow down. So this is what we call kinematic sequencing, is what I'm getting into. And you can just kind of go into Google and just type in golf kinematic sequencing, and it'll probably bring you to a website called K Motion. So as my lower body is slowing down, now my torso is beginning to fire off of that. So kind of think like a rubber band effect. So my lower body is gone. That's going to slow down. Now my torso is going to go. And now my shoulders, arms, and then hands. So that's kind of the sequencing in a semi-detailed, um, you know, semi-vague explanation. But the main thing that we see a lot there, L, is going to be the lower body in that transition. So we call it dissociation. When the lower body starts, just as the club is setting, or that last little 4%. I'm looking. I got a TV. I'm utilizing as a guide here. So utilize that as the top of the swing here completes, I'm starting that transition into my lead side, in particular, that lead foot kind of going to the heel. And don't forget to kind of push off the ground with that there, L. So hopefully that explains the sequencing of weight shift in the downswing. So think of pressure. We're starting to somewhat get away from the term weight shift, and we're getting into the term pressure. Because sometimes when you think of shifting your weight, what a lot of people do is they'll actually slide, and that's a very common thing that I see with like very even really good players. So, good question though, L. That was awesome. Jim G asks, should the club point up when parallel to the ground in the downswing, both before and after impact? So I'm assuming that you're meaning kind of like the toe up. Will the toe up be pointed up into the ground when the club is parallel, so into the downswing this way? Should the club point up, or I'm assuming that you're not going to mean face pointed up towards the sky. I'm assuming you're meaning more toe of the club point parallel to the ground into the downswing. So, and into the release point, same deal. Should the toe kind of be pointed up? Yeah, I mean, it's kind of relative there, Jim. Where we don't want to. So if I'm going into my backswing, so if we're looking from here, and what we don't want. So this is also toe up, right? But the face is open here, and we don't want that. This is also, this is kind of toe down, but toe slightly up, but this is really, really shut. Now, we are in the golf instruction world, we are favoring more of a closed club face and slightly into the takeaway. So if I look at this club head here, when the club head is traveling back here, this is actually square, by the way. So this is not quite parallel, but this is actually square. I see a lot of players do this here, Jim. So you have to be careful of thinking kind of toe up. They'll have the face begin to roll open, thinking that is actually the right movement. So what happens is, just to put it simply here, Jim, if I go back to impact from here, you can see that face is going to be really, really open. Obviously, I'm doing this all as an exaggeration. So what we want is, in essence, as we're taking the club back, we want club face to remain square. So this is square here to target line. This is not closed. Now this here, if we had the face kind of almost like the club face pointing towards me, if you're sitting up to it, that would be closed. And nothing's wrong with that, because you come to close, you can also get it back to square as we shallow the club on the way down. So that's what like Brooks Koepka does, Victor Hovland does, Dustin Johnson does that, where the face is really, really closed here as they get to the top, but then on the way down, they kind of square it back out because they shallow the club. And that's has to do with a lot of movement in the face, like Matt Wolff. There's a lot of aspects to the reason why they do that. But yeah, so we're going to like halfway back to parallel. Again, this would be considered shut. Would be, pretty much dead square here. This would be open. So the one thing I would say be careful of, and on the way through, so in the release point, as I'm swinging through, same deal. Like this would be here now. Sorry. This would be kind of released and really, really shut. So more than likely that this is producing a draw to maybe even a big hook. If you have it more square, that should be kind of dead, pretty much a dead straight ball usually. And then this means that you probably hit a little bit of a fade. So all of these are toe up ball relative to what the club face is at impact. So that's a kind of a long-winded answer to your question there, Jim, as far as, it would be toe up, but just be careful, especially into the backswing. Be careful of that face rotating open. I see a lot of players do that. And that just makes things a little bit more difficult there, Jim, because what happens there is that you've got to get the face square at some point into the downswing. So usually what that results in, again, is I see this over the years so many times, those who kind of roll the face open there into the backswing, they have a tendency to early release or throw the hands in on the way down. So Jim, kind of like pay attention to that. So if you find yourself that you do that, then your misses will be kind of block right, again, overdrawing it, maybe a little bit thin with your irons. So it's just that timing. What we're doing in the golf instruction world now is we're trying to eliminate so much in that timing of the hands, where it's just hard to do on a consistent basis, not unless you're hitting balls like every single day for hours on end, or it's hard to do like even when you're a little nervous in tournament settings. That's why I see a lot of guys close to lead wrist boat at squares, and they just rotate open out of the way. And like look at Colin Morikawa, who just won. You'll see an impact even with driver. His lead wrist is really, really bowed. Obviously, these guys are hitting it as straight as can be. So it's a factor to that. And that back in the day where guys used to be a little handsy, it was all kind of timing, right? So hopefully that answers your question there, Jim. All right, so with Rick B, he asked, with driving using the move, I can seem to shallow the driver, but I have a real problem closing the face, turning the hands down the face. Can you explain the way to do that with driver, as the head is so much bigger than irons? Yeah, so that's a great point. It's not only that the head is so much bigger there, Rick, but the club is also longer. So it's easier there, Rick, to actually shallow the plane with a longer club, like a 3-wood, hybrids, and driver, because of the length of it. You can feel the club head and the momentum of the length of that club can actually shallow the club easier. So if you are working on trying to actually shallow the club, I know you're talking about the face, but if you are working on trying to shallow the club, it is easiest to do it with a driver or a 3-wood. Sometimes for a lot of players, what I do is I'll take like a really tall, like I have those long drive tees, really tall tee, and put a ball on it like at the highest point, and I'll try to have them hit 3-wood. I would do this as if you're a little bit of a higher level player, because you can mark up your 3-wood pretty easy. But what you'll do is you'll try to hit the ball off clean off that tee. What happens is that really shallows a plane in the club coming in, almost like a tee ball, like in baseball, right? So I know that's the club shaft, and you're talking about more face. So one thing I should be careful of here, Rick, for you. Now, when I hear that people have a hard time, I know maybe you do it better with your irons, but because of the length of the club, it's harder to get that timing just right. What I'd be careful of here, Rick, is when you're shallowing the club, I may look at to see when you're shallowing the club. So what I mean by that is in the downswing. So have you gone through the move? The first start of the downswing, we're shallowing the club early on the way down. So this angle here is shallowing the club. The one thing we don't want to do here, Rick, is we don't want to shallow the plane of the arms and hands. So if I'm going here to the top of my swing and I shallow the club, the one thing I don't want to do, watch this here, I don't want to shallow the path of my arms and hands. So I see a lot of people do that when they're trying to shallow the club. So what happens here is you're actually getting yourself stuck. The face comes in open that way. See if you can see that there. So if I shallow the club late, so face is open, then I have to either I'll leave the face open or again try to save it with the hands. Other aspect there, Rick, is again, not maybe you're not going on this and shallow and playing the arms. The second thing that I see that's super duper common for so many players is the first move comes in maybe a little steep, but then later into the downswing. So that's why when we shallow the club, we do it early. So later into the downswing, we shallow the club. Maybe you're not doing the arms, but the club shallows too late. So down here, and again, that leaves the face open. So you can either stay there, and now you're hitting a block to the right, or again, utilize those hands last second, so closing the face down. And so then it just makes it easier without longer club. With the shorter iron, you can almost get away with it because of the time of that club head, right? So it's a shorter iron, so you're able to get that face kind of square last second, but with the driver, because of the length of it, and a 3-wood, it's just hard to get that timing right. So you might be, again, my assumption there, Rick, would be the block to the right with driver would be a miss. So what I would recommend for you doing, Rick, is actually slightly feel like, because since I would almost kind of guarantee it might be two of those things that I just described. As I was saying there earlier, we still want to get the hands really high. But Rick, what I would do is actually try to put a little emphasis on slightly shallowing the club here at the very top of your swing. So that would mean, again, lead wrist is slightly bowed here at the very top, and a little bit of extension here in that right wrist here. So try to feel that there as you get to the very, very top of the swing. And thankfully for science now that we are seeing a lot of players shallow the club at the last 4% of the backswing. So think about that there, Rick, and try that out. I'm pretty sure that would help you a lot when it comes to getting that face more square coming into impact there, Rick. All right, so hopefully I answered your question. That's a good one there as well. So Jim says, should you restrict your hip turn and your backswing to increase the stretch and tension between shoulders, hips for faster swings? Yeah, so that's actually a really good question there, Jim. So assuming that that idea kind of came about from the X Factor, like Jim McLean's X Factor. And that's where the misinterpretation of hip rotation in the backswing with the X factor. So a lot of people thought, oh, we have to restrict our hips to kind of create that, pool of the muscles, right? So you kind of stretch the muscles and so they contract and they want to fire there on the way down. The X factor is actually what I was describing there earlier. There, Jim, was a dissociation. So even Jim McLean has come out here recently because he got a little, knowing Jim personally, he actually got a little frustrated with the idea of people misinterpreting the X factor wrong. So what it is that as I'm going to the X factor is as I'm going to my backswing. So this is my upper body, and this is my lower body. So I'm rotating here. So before, as the backswing kind of completes, then I'm starting the transition. So see how that kind of the lower body unwinds and the backswing kind of completes. And now I have a true kind of rubber band effect between the upper body. So to put it simply here, Jim, think about this. So we talk a lot about this at Impact for tour players and hip rotation. So average on tour is about 45 degrees open with the hips at impact. On the PGA Tour, they're opening their hips 49 degrees into the backswing. So they're opening their hips on average more into their backswing than they are into their downswing. So we don't want to restrict hip rotation there in the backswing because that will restrict shoulder rotation. What we do want there, Jim, is we do want dissociation in the downswing. So that's, again, upper body's finishing its completion and the lower body should already be starting. That's not restriction, it's just more of a timing and a sequencing thing. So that's what you do want. You don't want to restrict because, one, that it's already proven, like look at Jason Day a couple of years ago, lower back pain. And you look at him now, you notice that he's opening up his hips a lot more in his backswing than he's ever done in his life. And he's playing decent golf now, not to say he's pain-free. So it does cause pain. Actually, if you restrict hip rotation in the backswing, that also causes a little bit of, well, not every time, but it can cause a little bit of a slide as well. And also potentially can shorten up your swing. So you actually lose speed that way. If you look at the 20-minute distance fixture, Jim, the number one factor generating speed is the room we generate here into the backswing, right? So don't restrict in the way back, but what we do want is that dissociation. So hopefully that answers your question there, Jim. All right, so John Z asks, I have an issue opening the hips early. I have a left knee injury. Okay, yeah, sorry to hear that. I tend to come up early instead of rotating left. Can I get left rotating early when I feel like I almost come off the right? Toe back heel early, and video shows hip open early. I feel like the right knee goes early. Your thoughts? Impossible drills. So let me kind of think about, I'm trying to visually describe what you're saying here, John. So in essence, what's happening is that, to put it simply, it looks like there's a feet pressure issue happening here, so that you're opening the hips almost like you're kind of spinning out of it there, John. And you feel like the left is rotating early. You almost come off your right and the toe of the back heel early. So you're kind of twisting out of it, if that makes sense. So now, pending, because you did mention to me that you have a left knee injury, what I would do there, John, is pay attention next time you go beat balls and what's happening into your feet. So we always talk about making the golf swing athletic. That's the number one thing that I want to do, is make the golf swing athletic. So athletic meaning that, if you were to throw a ball, you kind of turn and step into the lead side, and the hips are then going to rotate. So obviously, again, pending on your left knee injury, which is your lead knee, and that's unfortunate. I'm sorry to hear that, but if you can, I would. So going back to what I was just saying there with Jim, that dissociation. So when we're starting the backswing here, the second we kind of get the backswing complete and set, we should already feel a pressure here into that lead foot. And then from there, honestly there, John, the second you apply pressure into that lead foot, you should be pushing off with the right. And that's hopefully that prevents you from spinning out of it with your feet, and that'll get you pushing more with the right instead of pushing. I see a lot of people do this too, John, is that you'll push kind of forward towards the ball, which is nothing terribly wrong with that, but we still want a lot of force going to the left. We still want the hips rotating open there on the way down. So the drill that would be really helpful for you, like in the 20-minute distance fix focuses on speed with the sumo step drill. Another drill is just the simple step drill where you start with feet together here. This is important here, John. the very second you take the club head back, you should be stepping forward with the lead foot into normal stance. So whatever club you're going to use, doesn't matter. And I would try this as a practice swing at first and then take it to a real deal. The second the club head goes back, you're stepping forward into your lead foot. And then, of course, then you're rotating the hips open. And be careful of this here too, John, is that when people step forward, I see a lot of people do this. They'll move the upper body forward. So we still want to maintain spine angles as we do that. So I would pay attention to the pressure of your feet there, John, if it seems like you're kind of spinning out of it, if that makes sense. All right. Good question, though. That was really good. These are all great questions, by the way. These are good. Okay, James. Good morning, Robin. Good morning, James. I know we hear all the time about the body powers, the swing, but during the swing, I would think that the wrist whipping through impact is really the main power. Am I wrong in this, or am I thinking you're wrong or you're thinking correctly? Well, it's really relative there, James, right? So the hands have a lot to do with speed. So not necessarily. So think of it as power is like force and speed. True power is force and speed combined. So what's applying force might be your ground pressure. So I mean like your body mechanics, your legs, your hip rotation. That's what's applying force. What's applying speed is going to be the angles in which that club head is like narrowing to whipping through the hitting area. Big factor to the speed is going to be the hands. So when it comes to power, power is a totality of the body. But what's going to really generate the most speed is, well, we measure the club head. So the hands have a lot to do with that. I mean, alone, the hands can equate to like 40 to 60 miles per hour alone without doing anything. So that's a lag and how you release that lag down at the ball. But in order for us to accomplish that correctly, or I should say, in order for us to accomplish proper speed of the hands, then our sequencing has to be pretty darn good. So you see how it's all kind of really relative there to each other. So it's hard to kind of say this is the number one thing that you're gonna get the most power or the most speed. But because it all you need kind of one with the other. So you need the sequencing in order to get maximum speed of the hands or the club head, right? So you see what I'm saying? So that's why you got players like Ernie Els. Cameron Champ is a really good one to watch. If you're talking about power and you're talking about force and speed, Cameron Champ, I think, is the number one person on tour that exemplifies that to the most, because he does not look like he's going after, right? Doesn't look like he's like really trying to swing at it, but the physics of his swing are darn near perfect to pretty much maximizing out every single time without putting the effort into it. So he has a massive turn there. He even lifts the lead heel, hands get really high. He gets an insane amount of lag. His sequencing and downswing is probably one of the best, I think, on tour as far as pressure, hips rotating open. So when he's coming to his downswing, I mean, the angle of lag is unreal, right? And the sequencing is really good for the hands. So right at the ball, he's just releasing it so hard, so that club head's coming in so fast right at impact, and the angle is still really good to where he's de-lofting the face well. So he's creating an insane amount of ball speed there as well. So it's just everything's perfect to pretty much like maximize every single swing without while utilizing physics, without utilizing like your muscles, if that makes sense. So you're not wrong by any means, for sure there, James. It's just more of the sequencing aspect. That's what's going to give you the true force, and the speed's going to come from mostly with the hands. But that needs to happen because of the sequencing of the body mechanics. So pressure, legs driving, hips rotating open, upper body following suit. So hopefully that makes sense. I always like to think of it as like if I had to hammer. If I had to axe some wood, what I would do is I'll load up here and I'll get everything going. So the momentum of the axe, I'm not doing this with the hands because I'm not going to generate a lot of power that way. Right? I'm actually going to hit it less and I'm going to put a lot more effort. When you're really getting the axe and you're chopping wood, you're using everything you can coming into it, right? And then the axe has a lot of momentum, boom, coming down into the ball, especially if you kind of grip it down by the end of the axe. And that axe, because of the weight of it, really, but it's coming down with a lot of velocity, able to utilize a lot more power, but not like a ton of speed. So, or a lot of force, I should say. So hopefully that makes sense there, James, what I said there. Okay, there we go. Patrick C asks, can you discuss your feels of swinging the handle or butt of the handle? Do you feel like on the downswing it's going towards your left thigh? Um, so depending, so I'll talk about just kind of the sequencing and the timing of the handle into the downswing. So the main thing, of course, is, we talk about in the move section is shallow in the club here, Patrick. So when I'm coming down, of course, the handle or butt in the club ideally should be pointing outside the golf ball. Now, so that's the first start of the downswing. So let me kind of go, what would be the first start? Boom. So the handle is pointing outside. Now, as I'm coming to the downswing, what's happening is ideally, again here, Patrick, this would be ideal. If I can get to the downswing, this button in the club and the handle, it's obviously coming on the arc this way. But if I can keep that pointed behind the ball as long as I can, you'll notice here, so this would be behind, obviously. You can see the button and club. Let's see if you guys can see it here. Let me scoot over a little bit. All right, so if we're pointing it behind the ball here, if I'm hitting the ball this way, you'll see that really is able to help me narrow the angle of lag here into the downswing a ton. I don't get a lot of lag in my swing just because of my wrist mobility, but so I'm able to get a lot of lag here as I'm coming into the downswing. So yes, that's not going to stay there, of course, as long as we can we try to keep it there as long as we can. But as I'm continuing to my downswing now, after max lag position here, Patrick, this is where technically we start to release the club head. So max lag is roughly on average when the lead arm is parallel to the ground. So from here, now the handle is beginning to move just so slightly, kind of like you said there, towards my left thigh or towards a target line, really. And so the club head is beginning to slightly release. We don't want to do that too much. It's just beginning to release. And as I come down into impact, right, so now the club head is, so I'm coming down into the ball, the handle is beginning to move up. So I'm here, max lag, and coming down now, the handle is moving kind of level, but going towards the target line. So now here, club is parallel to the ground to the downswing. Now the handle is going to begin to move in an upward angle this way as I rotate up. Club head is coming square. So now I have, so the handle moves up, I have a ton of shaft length coming into the ball here. The face is going to be square, de-lofted, and it's going to continue to obviously go into its release point. So hopefully that answers your question there, Patrick, as far as like the handle and the button in the club and what's the sequencing to the downswing with it and how that relates to your release as well. So, but that was really good. That was awesome. Okay, Mitchell G asks, "Good morning, Robin. Good morning, Mitchell. My elbow comes out to do the flexibility like Clay. The elbow came out to do the flexibility Clay Couples and Nichols on the backswing." Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. So you kind of get the right elbow to come out into the backswing, okay? Clay talks about bringing the elbow in during the downswing. I have trouble with the timing of bringing the elbow in. Yeah, so one thing I would look in there, Mitchell, for you is then look at the plane of your arms in the backswing. So what I mean by that is, so to help you out with this, think like Jack Nicklaus and Freddie Couples and Ian Clay and a little bit myself, where I don't have a ton of mobility in my right arm or my right shoulder. If I stand straight up, you want to test it. If we can get to where, so I'm pretty much at 90 degrees. If I can get it to where here, if I'm standing straight up, I can get my right arm to tilt back a little more. That's going to help me a ton as far as getting the elbow to point down to the ground into the downswing, as well as shallowing the club with my right arm. So Mitchell, what I would look for you is I would look at the plane in your backswing. So whether you're more on a flatter plane, so if we look at lead arm, whether my lead arm is more flat, you can see the flatter I can be, the more I can flare it out. But what I would recommend for you there, Mitchell, is actually try to see if you get your hands really high here at the top, like even over exaggerate. Yeah, my elbow might fly out, but what happens there, Mitchell, is with these hands really, really high, I'm able to I have room to get the elbow to point down. You see what I'm saying there? So that's where it's really big for you, Mitchell, to see what happens. Like, don't be afraid to let your right arm or trail arm kind of come off the body a little bit. That's okay. Yeah, on the downswing, you definitely want to try to get the elbow to point more down, but see what happens is the more room you generate here, it might make it easier for that right arm to, and especially elbow pointing down, and shallow the club early there into the downswing. Again, number one thing I hear, only because I was also taught this as well, is that I see a lot of players who have so much room to get the hands high because I have two things. One, I was always taught to have a flatter plane That's going to promote a draw. 2, a lot of players are scared to get the hands really high or at the top because they're going to come over the top. And that's true. If you're coming over the top, maybe I'll try to say to get the hands high. But the main thing, again, is when you go here, you're trying to shallow the club early and get the elbow to point down. That would be ideal there, Mitchell. So I would take a look for you to see if you have the room in the backswing to do it. But that was a good question there, Mitchell. That was awesome. All right, Johnny H, should you feel more of your left hand or in your right hand at contact? I feel the club in the palm of my right hand at contact. Typically, when I get the best shot, I'm just getting lucky, or is this correct? So nothing wrong with that at all. I mean, think about what I was saying earlier in the webinar here, or the office hours, where we're talking about petting the turf with the palm of the right hand. So that's palm down, that's extension, that's helping you generate shaft lean. I mean, yeah, you probably would feel it more into the palm of your right hand as long as you're still generating shaft lean. And there's nothing wrong with that, Johnny, at all. Me personally, if I'm really trying to hit like a really, really, really low shot, like a stinger, I feel personally for me, my lead versus bowed. In general, like in my full swing, I try to feel a little bit lead versus bowed there impact. So that's back of the left hand down, and I feel like my lead versus bowed and going towards my target. So you have your option there. And the same lines again there, Johnny. It's going to be palm down, this angle there into that right hand. So there's nothing wrong with that. Again, to whatever you feel that works the best for you, right? So like I know for sure Ricky Fowler, he thinks of this here into the downswing, trying to get the back of the left hand to turn back towards the ball, down towards the ball, I should say. And then an impact, he feels lead versus bowed and going towards the target. Same thing with Tommy Fleetwood. But also, you got to think of it as I know for like Sergio Garcia, he feels it more into his right hand. He gets a lot of lag in his swing, and he straddles the club a lot, so he feels more of this pressure of the palm down. And that's going to the idea of covering the ball. So, yeah, I would say there's nothing wrong with what you're feeling there, Johnny. It's just more of a preference, what works really well for you. You see what I'm saying? But that was good. That was really good. But video 1.4, straight line release. It's petting the turf. Bob B. Robin, when we open the face of the club for wedge shots, is the direction of the ball flight perpendicular to the wedge, leading edge, or is direction of the swing? Oh, that's a good question. So balls in takeoff, a couple things here there, Bob. With the wedge, you're generating a ton of backswing. So there's a lot of factors here with that. So a very, very vague question for that there, Bob. With the wedge, the ball's in takeoff in line mostly with club path, but because the spin of the golf ball with the wedge, there's so much spin that you're generating and it's going backwards. So it's going to go straight in which the face and the path is going. But if the face is really, really open, let's just say with the wedge, like if I'm trying to hit like a flop shot, I'm going to swing left of my target. I'm aiming left, and I'm going to swing left of my target. And I'm going to have the face wide open. So the ball is going to go in line with where my face is going. So that's where, in bunker plays and flop shots there, Bob, I teach players to line up a little bit left of target. So I would say, if target's going to be 12 o'clock, I wouldn't go more than 11 o'clock left. Lined up with body, lined up with, feet, hips, and shoulders. And then also the path of your club head is going to travel in that same plane, but you're leaving the face open. So the ball takes off in line with the target. Sorry, I have like a itch on my nose. So so in that instance, yeah, it'd be more the ball direction goes in line with the face. But so that'd be perpendicular to what you're saying there as far as the leading edge of your club face. But again, the ball with wedges, and you're not swinging that fast with a wedge, so it is going to be more direction of face, but slightly combination, of path a little bit. But first thing is going to be face, then path. But be careful of too as well. If you find yourself, you do that and you line up a little bit left, and there's two factors here. Depending on what you're trying to do, I should say this here. If you're trying to hit a really high shot, obviously the face is going to be open. Standard wedge, the face is going to be a little open, but you're still generating shaft lean. You see what I'm saying? So the ball flight is going to come out pretty still aligned with club face, but more mid-flight. So again, depending on what type of wedge shot you're hitting, whether it be a flopper, whether it be a lot of spin kind of around the greens, whether it be like a pitch shot. But in general there, Bob, it is going to go more in the direction of face than path and a lot of factors that kind of coincide with that. So good question. Don't really get many short game wedge questions. So that was awesome. Okay. Die P. Hi, Robin. When I practice the swing using the move, everything is going well. But when I'm going to hit the ball, my swing is back to what it is and forget all things from the move. And any good idea to change this bad habit? Well, I would say, other than like just getting, that's kind of like obviously more of a mental, but also we have to retrain neural patterns, we have to retrain muscle memory. So other than kind of like mentally telling yourself, I'm going to get out of the way. I don't care about the result. I don't care about the strike. I don't care about the direction. I'm just going to do. If you see yourself in the practice swing and you can do it and you're doing it, obviously that shows that you can. Then you've just got to, when you hit a ball, kind of get out in your own way. Now, there's a lot of factors that there's so much muscle memory. Maybe there's something else that you're doing in the full swing, like not turning as much. Maybe the hands aren't high enough, whatever it may be. But it's more of a mental thing if you kind of get out of your own way there, guys. So the other factor is a really good drill to help you out. I mentioned this earlier, is actually slow motion swings. Like you go to hit a ball and you actually, but take it in absolute slow motion. Like take a 7-iron and you're literally going to hit it 15 feet in front of you. Not 15 feet, maybe 15 yards in front of you. And what you're doing is you're going to take a full swing, but you're going to go through the positions in your mind. So we're kind of ingraining new muscle memory. But what I would have you do there, Di, is that I would have you video yourself. So first video your practice swing and show yourself doing it. You're like, oh man, the move is there. I'm bowing the left wrist here. It looks amazing. You go to the real deal, not quite there. Then what I'd have you do is take literally a slow motion practice swing here, coming into your transition or shallow the club. You're going to make contact with the ball and swing all the way to your finish. And try to make solid contact. Don't top it, don't chunk it. Make solid contact. And video yourself literally in slow motion. And if you feel like, you go back and look at it and you're like, man, it's still not there, do it again. Super slow motion. Try to feel the position there. Maybe even go to a practice swing. And then what I would have you do there, Di, is if you find yourself to a point where you make contact with the ball, even though, again, a super slow motion, what I would have you do, sorry, I got something itching my nose. So what I would have you do is then slowly increase the velocity. So let's say super slow motion is literally 5% of 100%. And I would increase it to 15, 20, 25, slowly until, every time. And if you look at on video, let's say 30% speed, it goes back to old swing, then go dial it back down. But full swing, don't pause, but a full swing doing that. You'll be pretty surprised. Even tour players do that a lot. You'd be really surprised how well you can get in position when you're doing that, and then as you slowly increase the length of that speed. All right, Ed. So I'm going to start rifling through a few of these. A lot of you guys are submitting some in, which is great. I appreciate it. So I'm going to start going through these kind of quick. Hi, Ed. Hi, Robin. I hope you're doing well. Hope you're doing well as well. You've had me working on through the straight line release. Oh, yeah. Perfect. Hey, Ed. How's it going? A couple months back. Yeah. And question about the up and down of the Dr. J drill, ground force with feet and legs. Do I maintain the proper level not to come up or thrown the club into the ground? So I'm assuming, so you think your concept may be off there, Ed. So I'm assuming that you mean proper level as far as like your posture is concerned there, Ed. Not kind of popping up. Yeah, I mean, the idea is, hopefully I'm understanding your question there correctly there, Ed. So we're in the straight line release here, and you're kind of pushing off of the ground. I'm going to try to stand up with this one here. So if I'm pushing off of the ground, my left side is going up and back, right? But my right side is, this is what we call side bend here. My right side is rotating lower. So you always make sure, when you're doing drills, just as much in the backswing, my right side rotates up and back into the backswing here. I'm doing the same thing on the way down. So technically, I mean, it's okay for the head's going to lower a tiny bit, right? Because we're applying ground pressure. But yeah, so you do still maintain posture as the left side rotates up and back, but the right side is going to be lower. So if you find yourself there, Ed, you're getting to that straight line release, try to take a look at your shoulder plane and look at your hip plane to see if they're kind of leveling out, and that will cause you to kind of rise up and not maintain your levels. Hopefully that made sense if I interpreted your question correctly. But I think that's what I was hitting on there. So hopefully that gets to what you're asking there as far as the ground force with feet and legs. And how do you maintain the level? Well, you maintain the level with kind of the lead side. So don't. When I see this a lot here, Ed, by the way, where a lot of players who can rotate open, but they'll also kind of rotate open this way to, like, let's say 1 o'clock. And so then you're also kind of popping up out of your posture by doing that. So as long as you rotate open and you maintain lead side lower, so this side bend here, that's going to help you maintain the posture and levels there of your posture. All right, so hopefully that's good to hear from you, Ed, and hopefully that made sense there. Charles G asks, how far should the tilt from your hips in the stance be forward? I have balance problems and my shoulders seem to be flat at impact. Should the shoulders stay on the swing plane as well? Yeah, to that question. Yeah, that's exactly what I was kind of saying there with Ed. And should the arms be hanging from shoulders at address? What distance from short irons and driver should they be? So all clubs, short irons, long irons, driver, arms should be, there's kind of a rule of thumb. It doesn't have to be perfect this way. But when we get into our posture here, so it's kind of a straight back. We have a little bit of anterior tilt here into the hips. That's going to butt out. Our hands should be hanging roughly just below my shoulders here. Hopefully you can see that. So roughly right in the front parts of my shoulders, my hands are hanging there. And again, that's going to be the same in all clubs. The only thing that changes there, Charles, is the length of the club. But some people are a little bit closer. Some guys on tour are a little bit further away. But that's kind of like the rule of thumb. Arms and hands hanging naturally just right in the front parts of my shoulders here. And so hopefully that makes sense to you. You said you have balance problems in the shoulders, seem flat impact. So that seems, again, what I would also look at for either, Charles, is the movement of early extension. So that would mean this here. So I'm setting up to it here. Early extension at impact would be here coming into the ball this way. So then that causes me to kind of get level with my shoulders. And as I rotate and maintain posture, I can maintain the side bend here. And my shoulders here are running perpendicular to my spine axis, right? So I'll show you that one more time. Here's my spine axis here, and my shoulders should be running parallel, perpendicular to that spine axis. So that, again, that's meaning that that right shoulder is lower than the left as the time you're coming down into impact there, Charles. So hopefully that answers your question there. All right. 8 minutes. See if I can get about 4 of these questions done there. Oh, Charles W. Hi, hello. I struggle with flipping the club right at impact, i.e. no shaffling. I've been working through the lag and straight line release drills. I can do properly in the practice swing, but when I hit the ball, I go right back to a flip. Any thoughts? So Charles W., just really quick, the number one aspect to a flip is actually rotation. So what I would check for you there, Charles, is to see if your hips are rotating more of a full swing, or like I was describing there with Charles G., early extending. So we want to maintain posture there in the lower body. So that's the number one thing I see there. Hips do not rotate open out of the way there, Charles W., and that causes a little bit of a flip. Or it could be sequencing where arms are kind of starting the downswing first. So those are the things I'll probably pay attention to. So it seems that you've been working on shaftling there with the hands. Biomechanically, it's going to be impossible for us to generate a ton of shaftling if our body's square. And that's hips and shoulders, right? Tour average is 45 degrees open in the hips, 10 to 12 degrees open there at the shoulders. So that's what I'll look at number one first, because that's literally 100% of the time. Anytime you see a flip, is the hips are not rotating open and out of the way. So take a look at that there, Charles. And that'd be the compressionless stuff, but for you, it just sounds like more of a hip rotation thing. All right, Rick B asks, are you shallowing your sandwich on your full swing or your full shots? And would you give the idea of how distance from the ball with different length clubs? So that's a perfect question. Charles G just asked, we're staying the same distance away. It's just a length in the club that changes. So it's where the arms and hands kind of hang naturally, roughly just in the front parts of the shoulders. As long as you feel like your setup's good, like your posture's good at address, then the arms are kind of hang naturally right just in the front parts of our shoulders there. And the only thing that changes is the length of the club. You shallowing a sandwich. Well, you're not going to have as much movement of shallowing as you would with your sandwich, but a sandwich is going to be still shallow. but it's not going to be as like big movements for a lag, big shallow in the club. You're not taking a massive swing like you would a driver. You're not going to try to take it to parallel with the sand wedge. Well, maybe nothing wrong with it. In that case, yeah, you would probably have more shallowing, the more room you generate there on the way back. But you're not going to have a ton of movement in comparison to probably a full swing with any other club. But it is going to be, yeah, that's one thing we don't want necessarily is we don't want the angle with the sand wedge to come in too steep, because that can just bring in leading edge, and then you're going to. And if you shallow the club late, that's a like thin with wedges or block right with wedges. But if you come in too steep, then that's going to be really chunky with the wedges. So you want the club slightly shallow, but you're not going to be moving it quite a bit. So what I recommend there, Rick, is maybe potentially trying to feel the club shallow there at the very, very top. Okay. Let me see here. Do you recommend drawing a Sharpie line in the ball? Yeah, definitely, for sure, Daniel. Yeah, that's great. As long as it's, I wouldn't. The one thing I will say really quick here, Daniel, with that is I wouldn't fully rely on it for your line. As you see sometimes, I don't have a golf ball right here, but you see so many people kind of like get that line perfect, and it takes so long, and they fully rely on it. And you kind of forget like just the point and shoot type aspect when it comes to putting. Some of the best putters out there are just kind of like see the line or see the spot, hit it to there. So I would have it in direction of your line and just use that as like a guide to where it is going to be right to left. It's going to be somewhere right of the hole, but don't fully rely on it there, Daniel. But it's really good. Bob B. Robin, follow up. Let's go to the sand trap. Open the face 45 degrees in the swing path. Again, direction the ball is perpendicular to the club face. Okay, again, direction the ball path is perpendicular to the club face or in direction of the swing of the ball path. So the ball taken off the face in direction of the swing. So it's going to be again in the sand trap, same deal, just like you would. I think more direction of the swing, but when the ball lands, you get some side spin. That's because again, now we're talking about face being open. If you have path going left, faces depending on, this could be a long conversation here, Bob, but depending on the face being how much open it is, path going left, let's say it's path 5 degrees left, face being 13 degrees open, you're going to get a lot of side spin, right? But that path left, but because the number is greater, so see, this is where we're getting to like kind of TrackMan type stuff. If the path is left, but in a sand trap, the face is going to be very, very open, right? So again, the numbers, let's go with those two numbers, 5 and 15. Path of the club head going 5 degrees left, which in a sand trap, you're probably closer to 10. Face being, that's where you're aiming, face being like 15 degrees. Well, because the face is greater than the path, the ball is going to start more right than the path. You see what I'm saying there, Bob? So it's all really relative to how, in a sand trap, it's going to be more face because the face is going to be a lot more open than the path. Again, depending how much left you swing. So I don't want to go way, way left really so much. Just you want to aim left because the face is so open and you're swinging on your body plane, but the face is going to be a lot more open. So the ball should pop open. It's not a ton because you're not swinging that fast. Well, you're swinging pretty fast, but it's not a big swing. But the ball is going to start right of body path and club path, and the face being open is also going to be even that much more right. Again, it's not a ton because it's just a sand trap, but the spin is gonna have a lot more side spin to the right because of the face is a lot more open, and plus you're kind of doing this motion and cutting across it. So hopefully that makes sense. So relatively, it's all really relative to the person, but it's all in how open you have the face and how left you swing it. So it's kind of, there's a lot of science behind that, really kind of idea behind it. But to put it simply, yeah, if you have the face really open, it's going to go more on that line. All right, Bob. So hopefully that makes sense. Let's go take a look here. 2 more questions. I got 2 more minutes. Charles G, thanks. I meant how far forward should the tilt be with your hips at address? Sorry about that, but you answered. So tilt, gosh. So I'm assuming if you look from the down the line angle here, Charles, again, there's a lot of aspects to tilt. This would be more anterior pelvic tilt. There's no real aspect of how much. What we don't want tailbone to be pointing. This is posterior heel here. We don't want, here, let me think of this one here. So we don't want tailbone to point more down, but we do want is anterior tilt here and address, but we also don't want to create lordosis either here in the lower back. See this curvature? That's going to restrict hip rotation. That's ultimately going to cause lower back pain. So we want to have straight back, but tilt-wise down, it's about 20 degrees, hopefully posterior tilt down into the ball. Hopefully, sorry, Charles, if I didn't get your question answered correctly, but hopefully that makes sense now as far as the tilt. Usually when we hear tilt in the hips, that's what we're meaning. That's what we're hearing tilt. If you mean tilt as far as spine tilt, lead hip is about 10 degrees higher than the trail hip I'd address as well. So hopefully hit both aspects there, Charles. Gufran asks, how to close the club face in the downswing? There's a lot to that there, Gufran. What I would take a look for you is I'll take a look at the move section. I'll take a look at the compression line series and the straight line release series. Those three are going to answer your question to the totality. To put it simply, the move section talks about bowling the lead wrist. As I'm rotating the body open, as I'm coming down, again, my back on my left hand, the lead wrist is facing down towards the ground. Let me show you here. Down towards the ground here. That's getting that face to be square, and the impacts in the move I'm doing up top. I'm also doing it down here, and that's what's closing the face. And then, of course, as we release it into that straight line release. But there's a lot there, Gufran. Take a look at all those and let me know how it goes with that there. So, all right. I appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. Rick, Ed, Daniel, thank you guys for tuning in. Again, I'm not normally on here. Q's out of town, so I'm just covering for him today and tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to be at 11. So tune in for Fridays. I appreciate you guys very much for allowing me to kind of cover Q. Q's he's an awesome guy, and he has an awesome setup for sure. He's amazing in his knowledge. So if you have any, if you ever want to do the alumni reviews with me, spots are full right now, but let me know because every once in a while I'll have someone kind of canceled and then kind of shift you in there. Also, I am starting in-person lessons. I host, we're all based here in Orlando. I host all of our in-person lessons here in Orlando at Heathler Country Club. I'm doing it kind of part-time. So as in, I do it throughout the whole day, but I'm not like filling out my schedule because of COVID stuff. And we do kind of adhere to COVID protocols here in Orlando. So shoot me an email, robin@topspeedgolf.com, and let me know if you want to book a lesson. So other than that, I will see you guys tomorrow. Thank you guys very much. Great questions today, and I'll see you in the morning. Thanks. Take care.